Hey there, so for my journal for today, I'm going to be talking about what we've talked about in class recently, or we recently watched the School in the Cloud documentary about Sagar Mitra's School in the Cloud. And a little recap, the school basically was technology based. The students used computers to learn, and they had really no learning other than using the computers. The computers was their means of research, and that's the way they essentially learned. And so basically Sagar Mitra set up this hole in the wall experiment earlier on, and he learned that students were able to learn this way they were able to teach themselves things on the computer. So then he later established this school in the wall, not the school in the wall, I'm sorry, this School in the Cloud where in India. And he also did one in the documentary also showed that he did one in England as well, or the UK. I think it was England or somewhere. It was like the UK or England. Anyways, so in this journal entry today, I'm going to be talking about some of the positive things that I think come from this idea of using a technology-based education. And I'm also going to talk about some of the negatives that I think come from this technology-based education as well. And the positive things that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about how I can implicate those into my own future classroom. So I think the positive things that come out of this technology-based education are essentially students are able to find deeper messages. They're able to research, they're able to, it's more hands-on learning is what I would say. Essentially from a young age, these students are taught, or they're not even taught, they have to figure out things for themselves. I think oftentimes in traditional schools, students are not necessarily taught to find the answer, but they're directed in a certain pathway that alludes to or leads to a certain answer. But I think something positive that comes from this School in the Cloud or this technology-based education is that students are able to create their own pathway, and they're able to find research themselves without being directed or construed in a certain way. They're not having a teacher sitting over their back and saying, okay, this is how you research, or this is the path you need to take in order to find this information. And I think that's a good thing. I think students, I think that's a valid part of the learning process, is allowing students to figure out things for themselves. But then on the flip side, I think that kind of questions what is a teacher's role then, because this kind of is going a little bit off topic, but in school we were always taught, don't use Wikipedia. We were always taught, you need to use valid sources to find your information. You need to check where your information is coming from, and those were ingrained in our heads from the time we were little kids, especially in middle school and high school. Research was very important. Looking at where your sources come from, is the source reliable? Those are all very important things. So one of my concerns with this School in the Cloud, or this technology-based education, is are the sources that the students are using to find their information, are these valid? Are these valid sources that they're using? Because anybody can Google a question, but doesn't necessarily mean that the answer is necessarily accurate or correct. I could Google a question and Yahoo Answers pulls up, or Wikipedia pulls up, and essentially I could think that I found the correct answer, but it may not be. So I think in terms of my biggest concern with this School in the Cloud is, since students aren't necessarily taught to research and they're taught to figure things out on their own, how does that necessarily work? Because students are always when I was growing up, students have always been taught the proper way to research. And, you know, don't use Wikipedia, don't use these sources that are not valid. And that really helped me learn how to research. But if you're not given that base knowledge, or if a student's not given that base knowledge, how do they know that a source is like not reliable, or how do you know like a source isn't reliable? So that's one of my biggest concerns, or reasons why I do disagree with this whole scheme of, or this whole idea that Sagar Mitra came up with, of using just a technology-based education. Because I think that students still need teacher. I think a classroom still needs to be facilitated by a teacher. There needs to be a facilitator. There needs to be somebody guiding the students. And yes, like I said earlier, I think it's very, very important that students are able, there are, like I said, there are good things that come out of teachers not standing over students' backs and students learning how to research on their own. But again, I think there still has to be some type of facilitator. There has to be some type of teacher. And it makes me question, what is the role of a teacher then if we move to this technology-based education? So that's kind of where I'm at. I think Sagar Mitra, this idea of technology in the classroom, his idea of the school in the cloud, is actually a really brilliant idea. I think, especially, I think this definitely is a good means of teaching students in foreign countries. But in terms of this working all across, you know, the world, that's a question that I don't know. I wonder if I wonder how effective this school in the cloud would be in, like, say, America. I know they did the school in the UK, but I remember one part of the documentary where this kind of goes back to, like, is the research these students are using is valid? There was one part in the documentary where the students were like researching, or he asked them, like, Sagar Mitra asked them to find, it was about they were researching about raindrops, and one kid said something about, oh, well, how do we know this source is valid? And the kid goes, it looks valid. So if that's all kids are basing this information off, it makes me wonder, is kids' instinct good enough to determine if the information that they're relying on or they're getting their research from, I don't know. It makes me question a lot of things. I think a lot of positive things did come from the school in the cloud, or could come from the school in the cloud. I think technology in the classroom is a very, very, very important thing. I think there has to be I think now, especially in the generation we live in, I think technology is a powerful tool that can be used in the classroom. However, I don't think it should be the only resource students have. I think there are so many other valid resources out there that allow the classroom experience and allow learning to be a positive experience for students. I think in my opinion, I don't think students need to learn to rely completely on a computer for their means of education. And I think the computer is a valid place to seek answers. The internet's a valid place to teach yourself and learn new skills or new concepts. I'm not bashing the internet or saying, like, that I don't think that it should be used at all in the classroom. I think technology is a powerful tool, but I also think that there's something about having a teacher teach a class and then using those technology resources in the classroom, or allowing the students to use those resources in the classroom. But completely doing away with the traditional role of a teacher, I don't agree with. I think teachers are very important to the learning process for students. And that's kind of how I feel about this topic. I think technology should be used in the classroom. I think videos should be used in the classroom. I think there's so many means of technology, just like computers to be used to research, listening to music or incorporating music into the classroom, or incorporating, you know, like iPads for students to do, like there's those websites like iReady that help students grasp the concepts for like reading and whatnot. So I think all of those are valid ways or resources that students can use or teachers can use in the classroom. However, I don't necessarily agree with the idea that the traditional classroom should be done away with. I think teachers are still powerful resources to students. I think there still needs to be somebody to guide students. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I think there still needs to be someone to guide students in the right direction. So to sum my video up, I just want to say that I think that I agree with Sagara Mitra's idea that technology is a powerful resource. I think that it can be used in the classroom in numerous ways, but I don't think that technology should be the only resource, and nor do I think that students should completely depend on technology to learn. I think education needs to be technology and the traditional learning. So that's my journal entry. I hope you guys have a great night.